Hey everyone, you're listening to InfoQuench with Jeff.
And Amy. We're chatting about how to get the most out of life.
And covering a ton of interesting topics.
So there's sure to be something.
For just about everyone. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, and welcome to InfoQuench. I'm your host, Jeff.
And I'm Amy, and this is our first episode of 2022.
That's right, it is. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year indeed, and thank you so much for all your support in 2021. We're looking forward to a lot of episodes coming at you this year.
Yeah, your support keeps us going.
Definitely does. So this episode is going to be on tips for change, hope, and happiness in 2022.
Ah, the trifecta.
That's right. It's what we all need going forward. And I want to start this one straight off with the quote that inspired this episode. It's by Anne Frank, and it is, "What a wonderful thought it is that some of the best days of our lives haven't even happened yet."
That's right. The best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come. I think that's a great way to look toward the future. And I'll dive straight into some of the tips that I have. And the first one is just to look for meaning in the most challenging moments. And I think with the ongoing pandemic, this is definitely a challenging moment.
Oh, yeah.
And by moment, I mean years for humanity.
Absolutely. It's been quite a ride for a lot of people, for everyone, but for some people more so than others.
And so some of these tips I got from some TED Talk speakers and just a variety of sources that I'll sort of go through as we go along. But this first one is referenced by writer Andrew Solomon, and he just gives the advice that you need to take traumas and make them part of who you've come to be. You need to fold some of the worst events of your life into a narrative of triumph, evincing a better self in response to the things that hurt. And I think that's definitely true. When I look back at negative events or different traumas that I've undergone in my life, I can see something positive that has come out of each and every one of them. And I think that's what you need to focus on.
No matter what you're facing in life, you always end up learning something, coming out with something.
Yes. And I mean, with the pandemic, a lot of us will say that resilience has perhaps become an overused word in terms of developing resilience and patience. But I think for me, it's given me just a sense of gratitude for the things that are really important in life, and caring for community and being close to family, opportunities to attend events and gatherings, things that, we'll be able to do once again in the future. But I think having a gratefulness for those things is something I've taken away from the pandemic.
That's right. And I find that whenever you go through something pretty trying in life, that's something that really challenges you in a big way, the moment you decide to absorb some of that hurt, some of that, the way it makes you feel, the quicker you can get over it, it seems. Like instead of pushing it all away and not really facing it, if you face it and you let some of it absorb into your everyday life, it's easier to get over.
I agree. I think sometimes...
See life as a salad where everything is in it and you got to eat everything. Do you know what I mean by that?
I feel like you've been using that salad metaphor.
Did I use that in other podcasts?
I don't. Well, no.
I'm repeating myself.
Just a lot in life recently. It's not a bad one. I like it. I like salads. Salads
we have to eat
of
more
all
salad.
kinds. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's our...
Eat more salad. That's I'm going to get that on a t-shirt.
James Clear is the author of Atomic Habits, and I sign up for his 321 email. It comes out every Thursday, and it just gives different little bits of advice and things to ponder. And the one he had just going into the new year was to reflect on the year that's passed and ask yourself, what is the one lesson you learned or relearned this year? And I just thought that was an interesting question to ponder. So listeners, maybe that's something you want to look at when you're reflecting on 2021. What is something that you may have learned? And if you're interested in Atomic Habits, it's a great book. We actually did a whole episode on it. And really, if you're doing New Year's resolutions, it's just a great way to get some tips and
how to stick with them and
how to make them stick, because that doesn't always happen with New Year's resolutions. So that's episode 46.
It's funny because one of my resolutions from last year was to do more art, and I actually followed through with that. And I actually did a lot more, and it stuck. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, it must have been that episode. It's actually one of our most downloaded episodes.
It's probably a pretty popular book.
It is.
What is it called again?
Atomic Habits. Yeah. So, definitely check out the book. But if you don't have time to read the book, then can listen to a 30-minute episode of InfoQuench.
Yeah, we covered it all. You don't even have to read the book. Just send us like a portion of the book sale. No, I'm just joking. Don't do that.
Another person I often reference is Tim Ferriss, and I get his 5 Bullet Friday emails. Those are the only 2 weekly emails I get are James Clear and Tim.
You were a
Ferriss.
huge fan of Tim Ferriss.
I am.
You're on the Ferris wheel.
That wasn't even something you planned ahead of time, was it?
No, that was a good one.
Or did you have that one in your back pocket?
I had it in my back pocket for like a sentence before.
Oh, okay.
It was a quick draw.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, I'll give you credit for the wit on that one.
Thank you.
I think the reason I like Tim Ferriss is his stuff is always so well researched, and I appreciate that. Like, he really does put the time into what he puts together, whether it's blog posts, his podcasts, his books.
It's what he does, though, isn't it? Isn't that what he does? Is that his like main income? Is doing these podcasts?
Well, yes. But there are
It's
people
good.
who that's their main income, and they don't really put
true.
the same level of work and detail into it. His recommendation was not really to do New Year's resolutions. What he does is a past year review.
Okay.
And so what that involves is just taking, a half hour to an hour and looking back at your year that's gone by and saying, what were the things that you really enjoyed about that year?
Yeah.
Who were the people that you enjoyed being around? What stuck out to you in terms of great memories, places that you visited, things that you did? If you need to remind yourself and you happen to have a calendar, you can sort of use that to jog your memory and look back on that. And the idea behind this is to then go forward into the next year and recreate more of that positive.
That's a really good idea, because it is learning relearning what you already learned. That's pretty much goes back to that, right?
It does.
Because it really is amazing when you can replicate good memories, because why wouldn't you?
Well, we talked about this just last night. So last night was New Year's Eve, and we were talking about 2021, and I was lamenting that I thought 2021 was a bit of a blah year, that, the pandemic had started in 2020, and a lot of things had started, and then they just sort of continued on throughout 2021, and that there weren't really any high points. But then you reminded me, well, there were some vacations that we took. We had an amazing trip to Grand Manan, and taking that time to reflect on the positive memories of the year, it really did make me appreciate 2021 a little bit more, and also made me think about, hey, what do we want to do this year so that we can have those same types of experiences and build upon them.
Well, if you really want to relive those kinds of experiences, you should pick up my book, The Zen of Jeff. Because all the answers are in there about how to do that. No, it makes so much sense.
Is it really a book, or is it a pamphlet?
It's not
is
even
it just a sentence.
It's just a meme. It's just a meme. It's not even a pamphlet.
Here's a little admission. I called memes memes for the longest time.
Really?
I did. Well, because in French, I just, the word meme.
I would have called you out on that. You've never called them memes to me.
Well, it was a long time ago, and maybe I only called them that in my head. As when you're reading something in your mind, and you kind of say it to yourself internally, and then someone says it out loud.
Channeling your inner mem.
Yes.
I get you.
People know, but now I know it's meme.
That's so funny.
Yeah, that idea of past year in review versus if New Year's resolutions aren't your thing, maybe that would be.
Yeah.
Another tip I have is just around shifting expectations. And, we are bombarded by negativity in terms of our headlines and, with the news, with COVID, with just tragedies going on around the world. But we can start to sort of change our way of thinking. And neuroscientist Tali Sherritt talks about the idea of creating sort of an optimism bias. And what that is just, it changes subjective reality. So she talks about the fact that, if you get up and you say, I'm going to have a good day, then chances are you're going to go through the day with that perspective, and your day will be better. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what we expect the world to be changes the way we see it. And that in of itself can create more happiness and optimism as we go through our life.
To me, that makes like very logical sense. Like, it makes, if you want to will something to be, then having a positive attitude about that will is going to, be a direct result of bringing it around.
Well, and she further explains that, if you do start to focus on something negative, begin by recognizing it.
Right.
And congratulate yourself on recognizing that your mindset at that moment is negative. And then take the next step to look for some positive things. And they can be the smallest things. They can be that morning cup of coffee.
The
that
smile
can be
you got.
The smiling. Yeah, that's right. The smile you got from some stranger.
Yeah, I mean...
Not a creepy stranger, because that wouldn't be something that was positive.
No creepy strangers in the trifecta.
But yeah, so you basically train your brain to zoom in on those positive events. And I was thinking about this today because we had gone out for a walk as a family. We just were getting a little bit of cabin fever, just, trying to
It was New Year's Day.
Yeah, it was New Year's Day, super mild here in beautiful St. John, New Brunswick. And we went to our local Rockwood Park, which is just a beautiful municipal park. And it was
designed by the
packed.
same man that did Central Park.
That's right.
Just to let you know.
Yes, that's right. Landscape architect did Central Park as well, and did our Rockwood Park here in St. John, New Brunswick. And we went there, and it was so busy.
It was like human soup.
It was. We even had a hard time finding a parking spot. And when we did find a parking spot, I was hesitant to get out of the car because the people in the car beside us were trying to get out at the same time. And
there was a lot of people. It was like human soup.
It was. Yeah, you really like that soup reference.
It really was. I know.
Soup and salad. You're all about the soup and salad.
I'm all about the soup and salad. This is the soup and salad episode.
Long story short, I basically said we're not getting out of the car. We're going somewhere else. So we kind of have our own place that we go in the city to go for walks when we want to walk.
Sometimes we live in our own Seinfeld episode. Sometimes.
I know. We got all completely parked, and then I was, basically threatened our son within an inch of his life. I'm like, don't open the door while the people beside us are still close to the car. And then I'm just like, we just had to go elsewhere, because even though we were outside, it was just too close.
Yeah.
People were too close. And I didn't want to go for a relaxing nature walk trying to distance from everybody every few steps.
Right.
So we went to we have our own little secret squirrel spot that I'm not going to disclose. Jeff just gave me the death stare. But, we just a place that we could go and walk outside. And so by the time we got there, it started to sprinkle.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean it started to rain.
It really was never really raining, though.
Well, it was a little bit, and I didn't know. In my mind, I'm like, is it going to pour? Are we going to be really far away from the car and shelter, and it's going to be pouring rain? But you said, you know what? We're not sugar. We won't melt. Let's just
keep walking.
And we did, and it was awesome.
See, that is another chapter in the Book of Jeff, or the Zen of Jeff, rather.
The
Book of Jeff.
Well, you got a whole book now.
It sounds like I'm a Mormon or something.
Yeah. The lesser-known book.
The lesser-known Book of Jeff.
But, you were right. It was to sort of focus on the fact that we were outside. I was taking a moment of negativity and focusing on the rain, but you were focusing on just being outdoors. And it was, it made all the difference.
I'm glad you picked up on that. That was one of my brighter moments of the day.
Yes. We had lots of bright moments of the day.
Thank you very much.
That brings me to the definition for this episode, which is, I love this word, persnickety.
Persnickety. I may have heard that word before you told it to me earlier when we were rehearsing for the show.
Yes.
Like we rehearse. But anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Our rehearsing is, Jeff, do you know what persnickety means? No? Okay, maybe other people don't either, so I'll use that as my definition for this episode.
That's exactly how it went. And I even forget what it means. You told me, like not even 20 minutes ago, what it meant, and I forget again.
Well, I think a lot of the words I choose to cover as definitions on our podcast are words that I have heard but maybe don't realize the exact definition. Sometimes you can decipher it based on context, but not always. I mean, I know what a snickerdoodle is. Mm-hmm. They're delicious.
Snickerdoodle and pumpernickel. There's all kinds of words that are close. But what does it mean again?
So persnickety is, well, you don't even have to say again because I never even got to the definition yet.
Yeah, but you did earlier, and then I forgot.
Oh, you mean before we recorded.
Yeah.
So it's an adjective, and it means placing too much emphasis on trivial or minor details.
That's it.
Being fussy. So for me, my minor detail today was putting too much emphasis on the rain.
Ah.
But an example of that in a sentence would be, she's very persnickety about her food.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, our son is very persnickety about his food, but I think most kids are.
My thought, though, when it started raining, wasn't like we should get in the car because we're going to get wet. It was like, who cares if we get wet? I mean, what's the big deal? How often does anybody really walk in the rain? Let's do it. You know?
This reminds me of an episode of The Golden Girls where Rose talks about St. Olaf, and she talks about the fact that there was a day it started raining, and somebody said, let's go out of the rain. They went into a building, and she said, and from that day forward, people, were coming in out of the rain. It was... Speaking of Golden Girls,
rest in peace.
Great soul was left the world yesterday, and that was Betty White.
Betty White.
She left a blazing trail behind her because she led one crazy, fulfilling life.
She's 16 days short of 100.
Oh,
that's crazy.
Is that what it was? 16
yes.
days?
Yeah.
All right. So one more thing I want to talk about persnickety is, Jeff, I'm just going to talk about the fact that you have an obsession with empty coffee cups on shows.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever we watch any show
that's
or
another
movie
Seinfeld-like thing.
where people have these, paper coffee cups, Jeff always has to say, look at them, they're empty.
These detectives show up to interview somebody, and they're like, where were you on the night? And they're holding their coffee cup, and it literally looks like it's just going to float away on them. There's obviously no liquid. There's no water. There's certainly no coffee. They wouldn't. It just drives me crazy, and I don't know why.
And you have to mention it every single time, and then the whole scene that we're watching becomes us focused on these coffee cups and whether or not they actually have liquid in them.
But you have to admit, though, ever since I said that, you watch shows and you look for the coffee cups that are empty, don't you?
Even I saw one show with pizza boxes, and I'm like, there's no pizzas in that. Look at how they're holding them.
See, that's very Seinfeld-esque, I find.
It's very persnickety.
Very persnickety.
So another way when we're talking about hope and happiness is listen to other people's stories. So sometimes when you're feeling down, it can help to get out of your own head. So maybe make it a point to ask people in your circle, friends, family members, or maybe even a stranger, just to tell you a story about something meaningful in their life. Not a creepy
stranger, though.
And the important part is to listen deeply and, and with intention and sort of take that in. And
active listening.
Active listening.
Yes.
And give you some perspective. And this makes me think of a negative story of my own that I will share with you. So perhaps if you're having a bad day, you can reflect on this story of mine, and hopefully it'll make your day seem a little brighter.
I have no idea what story you're about to tell.
I know you don't.
I'm excited for it, though.
This story begins with when I used to live on the Kingston Peninsula, and I would have to take a ferry to work every day. And it was a long ferry ride. It was about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I can't remember exactly, but it was, a lengthy ride.
Yeah.
So I was leaving from the house in the morning and, racing to make it to the ferry, as I would do most mornings in my 20s without planning ahead enough time, but made it onto the ferry. And as I was sort of pulling on and the car was turned off, I started to smell something. And then I realized I had stepped in dog poop in my yard before I got into my car. And then I was on my way to work. I'm sitting in my car with dog poop on my shoes, and I had not really easily cleanable, if that's a word.
Yeah,
cleanable,
you're not just going to use
washable floor mats. They were carpeted floor mats.
Yikes, I don't like where the story's going.
It was pretty bad.
Okay, then what happened? Is this the end of your story?
I don't know. Do you want me to divulge what my solution was?
Because I think I know what your solution was.
Okay, do you want to take a guess?
I do want to take a guess.
Do it.
You probably did what a large percentage of any normal person would do, is you went outside and you looked around, you found a twig or a stick, and you cleaned out your boots or your shoes really well and probably washed them down with some water and then got them cleaned up.
So, okay, you're partly right. And so I had shoes on that I knew I had to work the whole day in.
Now, did they have treads? Was the poop able to go in between the
treads?
They
weren't too tread-like, which was good. Which was good. So I did stop off on the side of the road and got my mat, and I basically just had to roll it up and put it in the trunk. Luckily, I didn't have a hatchback, so I could kind of contain the smell.
Good.
And I thought, I'll deal with that later.
Yeah.
It's not an immediate thing. Wiped off my shoe on the grass, but when I got back in the car, I realized, this isn't going to do the trick. So then I had to, and I didn't have running water because I was just on the side of the road. So I had to pull over to a gas station and go into the washroom and wash my shoe in their sink.
Wow.
I know, it's horrible. It was an absolutely horrible thing to do.
That would have been funny to walk into the bathroom at that moment. People would be like, What's that smell? Oh, people wash their hands there.
Well, luckily it was a single person bathroom. It wasn't
Yeah.
a stalled bathroom, so nobody could see what I was doing. But
Okay, that's good.
I'm sure that it left a.
I'm
yeah.
sure you scoped it all out and made sure that you wouldn't get
I
found
was
out.
trying to be pretty incognito about the whole thing.
This is a pretty bad job then. You know what you should have did? You should have called the wolf. Remember who the wolf was?
Yes, I do. The cleanup guy
Yeah,
on
just kidding. Yeah,
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Reservoir Dogs. I can't remember which one.
I can't remember either. But yeah, he could have taken care of my poop shoe.
Yeah.
But you know what? I did a great job. I cleaned the sink to make sure it wasn't too nasty for the next person.
Too
and I got through
nasty?
it.
Or like you didn't leave it slightly nasty, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
you know
good.
me.
I didn't think you would do that. But no, there's
So
always
if you're having a bad day, think about me being stuck on a ferry with a dog poop shoe and trying to figure out the solution before I had to get to work.
no
And-
twigs. No twigs were involved in this?
Yeah, there wasn't the tread. The tread factor wasn't there to warrant twigs.
Okay.
But I
guess
agree,
that-
twigs are a great solution
makes
when you got
sense.
heavy treads going
Yeah.
on. So some psychologists talk about a systematic approach for generating hope. What that involves is just focusing on, or this is just a sort of one technique that they do, is to have people focus on specific future goals.
Okay.
You know, to look out into the future rather than focusing on maybe some negatives in their present, and then create different pathways or methods of reaching that goal.
Okay.
That can just help refocus the mind and make
Yeah,
people
rewires-
hopeful towards something in the future.
It goes back to what we were discussing before about how you can will positive things. If you will positive things, positive results more than likely will happen.
Yes,
You know?
you're right.
It makes sense.
The whole self-fulfilling prophecy, it's a thing.
Trifecta. It's the trifecta, honey. It's what
You
we
like the
call
word
it.
trifecta. What if it was only like two things or four
Trio.
things?
Duo.
Duo? Trio?
Quartet.
It's a quartet.
Well, that's what it is.
Next thing I want to talk about is just to remember the essential goodness of humanity. And I think we often hear people quote about Mr. Rogers saying, when tragedy is happening, look for the people doing good. And I had come across a mention by a photographer, Mary Latham, and she talks about the terrible shooting at Sandy Hook in Connecticut. You remember that school
Oh, yeah.
shooting? It was so absolutely
Yeah.
horrible, and how she couldn't take her eyes off the news. But she said a coworker came by her desk and told her that he had just been at a local coffee store, and a stranger bought a $100 gift certificate, and just to lift everybody's spirits, because everybody was sort of talking in the line about what was going on, he told the barista to just pay for the customers in line with the gift card. And the photographer told her mother about what had happened. Her mother was battling a second round of cancer, and her mother said to her, there's always going to be these horrible tragedies that happen in our lives, these terrible things, but there's always going to be more good out there, and you just have to look for it. And so that actually inspired Mary Latham to start traveling across the U.S., and she collected stories of human kindness to compile them into a book that she plans to put into hospital waiting rooms.
Oh, that's
for
a
people
great
to reflect
idea.
on.
Look, it's one good thing after another. It's like a good news or a good vibes tsunami. It's great.
You know what's not a good vibe tsunami?
No.
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone. Yeah, you're not a fan of that show.
I know that some of our listeners are probably big fans, and I don't know why I just started hearing about it all over the place, because I think there's 4 seasons that have run, but Jeff's like, let's give it a go.
Well, but a good friend of mine really hyped it up, and I was, all right, we'll try it.
And I'm not saying it's not great, but when the opening scene, and this is not a spoiler alert because it literally happens in the first 2 minutes, where a horse gets shot in the head.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't need that kind of negative imagery in my head going forward. I don't need that type of...
Well, it wasn't, to be fair, it wasn't a horse that just like stole a cigarette or something. It was, it needed to be done.
No, the horse had been like pretty much destroyed in a vehicle accident.
Let's not, well, you know what? If you haven't seen the first episode yet, we're not really spoiling anything.
Well, no, this happens in the first 2 minutes.
Now that's a spoiler.
But there's a lot of horrific scenes that I'm like, okay, I'll
that's
give it a
not-
try, and
I
I'll
have
give it a
to
couple
admit, though,
episodes. There were a lot of bad scenes. I was like, I don't want this. This is what's going to give me nightmares.
I have to admit, though, that's not why you didn't like the show, though. It's not the gratuitous violence or...
That was a big part of it. And,
Really?
And it had a bit of a dynasty feel.
That was it. That's what I was going to bring up. It had, I think you said it was like a cowboy dynasty or something like that. And that's pretty much what it was, right? Anyway.
It was a bit. But, I could see how it would be entertaining for people who... I don't like horror movies either for the exact same reason. I don't want to see those gruesome images.
It's one of those shows very much like Sons of Anarchy where I hated it pretty much the whole time, but it was just like, let's just see what happens. Let's just see what
happens for hours.
And Yellowstone is like that. I could spend a couple more weeks watching it just to see what happens.
I'm just going to dedicate like a full week of my life to watching the show out of curiosity.
Anyway.
So another way that you can, change things, change mindset is just to recognize that you have the ability to change your own life at any point.
You do.
I think sometimes we lose that perspective. We dwell on being in a negative situation. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's our job, maybe it's a toxic friendship.
Yep.
But we have our ability to,
change,
to control that, to walk away. And
you can literally control your own destiny.
Yes, you can. So just a reminder that, sometimes that change can be really challenging at first, but it will pay off in the long run.
Yeah.
And I've done that. I've made a few, turns in my life, and I think most people have. And hopefully they, for you, were for the better. And just remember, you can keep those going. If you're not happy with where you're at, make a change and move in a better direction.
Speaking of making a change, I wanted to do the tip, the random tip.
That's supposed to come at the end.
You're
just going to jam it in the middle?
Oh, aren't we at the end pretty close?
No, we're not, but you can go ahead.
No. You know what? I can swing back to this anyway.
No, so. You seem to be pretty... Let's go with that random...
We've been talking about, fulfilling your life with positivity, and then positive things will happen, right?
Yes.
And unbeknownst to me, we didn't discuss this, you and I, before this, and I picked a quote that directly correlates with that. It's, try going 24 hours without complaining, not even once, and watch how your life starts changing.
You're right to go. I've heard of that challenge before, to stop complaining, even not just externally, vocalizing your displeasure with things, but even that internal dialogue that you have going on where you're complaining about things taking place in your life. Just try to shut it off. And it can be hard, but the more you do it, the more you train your mind to not go there in the first place.
I don't think I've ever done that, and I think I might try it.
I've heard of people putting an elastic band around their wrist, and every time they complain, they snap themselves with it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, every time they complain, they keep putting an elastic band on it until it gets really, really, really tight, and then their fingers explode.
Their whole hand just falls off.
Did you ever see that? The watermelon? The people, that's one of those, with TikTok, whatever, challenges or whatever, where people will take a watermelon, and they'll take, an elastic and put it around the middle, another one, another one, another one, and another one, and they do it until the watermelon explodes.
Does it really?
Oh, yeah. It blows right up from the pressure.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's not like one of those Mentos Coca-Cola scenarios. It's
but similar, because there's a direct result for, you know what I mean?
Well, there's a reason to go on TikTok. Return to your home base. Author Elizabeth Gilbert wrote Eat, Pray, Love, which is a book I enjoyed, and the movie not as much, but the book was great. And she talks about just, when you feel like life is out of control and you just need some stability, return to the things that give you that sense of control and stability. Or, maybe it's your family, maybe it's returning to a hobby, or just getting into, your regular self-care routine.
Yeah. That
can help you get through some of the challenging times that may be going on around you.
Self-care is important.
It is. Last thing I'm going to talk about is death.
Oh, that's a fitting way to end the show.
And it doesn't have to be a morbid thing. This little tidbit comes from an artist, Candy Chang. She animates public spaces. That's one of her things. She does sort of installations that people can go and visit. So what happened with her is that somebody close to her passed away, and she was inspired to transform an abandoned home in her city of New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And, I just said it. I said New Orleans like a tourist.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
all right.
We are tourists. We don't live in...
I know, we are tourists, but so...
New Orleans. There you go.
New Orleans. In her city of New Orleans. So she took an abandoned home in her city of New Orleans, and she created a giant chalkboard with a single fill-in-the-blank sentence, and that sentence was, "Before I die, I want to blank."
Yeah. And
then what she did is she invited people to come in and complete the sentence. And so that was sort of filled the walls.
A widespread thing.
She did. She has multiple installations in various cities of the exact same thing. The wall changed this neglected space into something that connected the neighbors and highlighted just all of the people who visited their hopes and dreams.
It created a universal dialogue.
So Chang says that in our age of increasing distractions, it's more important than ever to find ways to maintain perspective and remember that life is brief and tender. And so in this way, preparing for death and thinking about all the things you can achieve right now can be one of the most uplifting things that you can do.
Right on. I love that. I love that. You know what? I have to admit, I love the positivity of this show.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, that's why it was all about change, hope, and happiness for 2022. Happy New Year, y'all.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening.
Be sure to check out past episodes and subscribe to keep up with what's new.
You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, and why not leave a review?
You can also follow InfoQuench on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Till next time.